Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this Overcoming Perfectionism workshop, pre-recorded workshop. I thought I would start with this image of the Journal of Perfectionism. Perhaps you feel that you can relate to some of these statements, such as 7 things your mother never taught you about why success is so very far out of reach, or erasers reviewed, which name brand erasers rips through paper after only 40 corrections. So these are obviously statements made in jest, but some of us do deal with these types of perfectionistic behaviors, thoughts, and feelings that can actually inhibit us from being successful in our lives. So the first thing to do is how to recognize perfectionism in yourself. This is an important step as it helps you to figure out whether you have a problem with perfectionism. Remember, there's nothing wrong with having high standards, but when those standards are too high, they can really get in the way of your work, school, your relationships, and even your enjoyment of life. So in the next few slides, we'll go over how to recognize perfectionism in the way you think, feel, and behave. But before we do that, I want you to ask yourself these questions. Do you have trouble meeting your own standards? Do you often feel frustrated, depressed, anxious, or angry while trying to meet your standards? Have you been told that your standards are too high? Or do your standards get in the way? For example, do they make it difficult for you to meet deadlines, finish a test, trust others, or do anything spontaneously? If you answered yes to some or all of these questions, then you might want to reflect on your own perfectionism. So, perfectionism affects how one thinks, feels, and behaves. One of the first ways that affects how one thinks is in black and white thinking. So, something is either all wrong or all right. Or, for example, anything less than perfection is a failure. Or if I need help from others, then I am weak, right? There's no middle ground, there's no gray area. It's black or white thinking. Also, you may exhibit catastrophic thinking. So you might say something like, if I make a mistake in front of my friends, I won't be able to survive the humiliation. Or I can't handle having someone being upset with me. This type of catastrophic thinking over dramatizes the reactions people may have to you, or that your circumstances may change because of your behaviors. Also, it may affect you in overestimating probability. So, for example, although this young woman spent all night preparing for a presentation, she knows she won't do well. Or if I don't get an A in the class, then I'm not going to get into any school. So you're overestimating the probability that you will fail or you'll do bad in something. Finally, perfectionists might use a lot of should statements, such as, I should never make mistakes, or I should never come off across as nervous or anxious, or I should always be able to predict problems before they occur. So these should statements set you up for failure because they're saying that very normal types of behavior, such as making mistakes, are wrong, right? So perfectionism also affects how you may feel, so that it can make you feel depressed, frustrated, anxious, and even angry, especially if you constantly criticize yourself for not doing a good enough job after spending a lot of time and effort on a task. Perfectionism can also affect how you behave. So you might be a chronic procrastinator, or you might give up easily. Like this first image you see, you might be overly cautious and thorough in tasks. So it appears that this gentleman is cutting up okra precisely for a dish. So, he may be spending 3 hours on something that should actually take him about 20 minutes to complete. You may also be an excessive checker. So spending 30 minutes looking over an email to your instructor, or looking at an essay for 45 minutes for spelling mistakes. This second image shows someone who's trying to improve things constantly by redoing them, right? So we see a young boy writing the same thing over and over late into the night, and his parent is concerned about him. So we're trying to make something perfect by doing it over and over again. Like this young girl, you might be agonizing over small details, right? So, this young girl feels like the sun isn't yellow, or that the tree is too big for her image, or that the stick person isn't even a good stick person. So these are some of the types of behaviors that might affect you as a perfectionist. There are ways to overcome perfectionism, a number of simple tools that you can use to help change your perfectionistic behavior, feelings, and thoughts. The first tool is to start changing your perfectionistic thinking. So rather than using negative self-talk, try using these positive, realistic statements, such as, nobody's perfect. All I can do is my best. And it's okay if some people don't like me. No one is liked by everyone. It's okay not to be pleasant all the time. Everyone has a bad day once in a while. And especially, making a mistake does not mean I'm stupid or a failure. It means I'm human. So try these statements out for yourself, or maybe make some positive, realistic statements for yourself. Maybe it's for an assignment or for a class where you are writing down a positive, realistic goal for yourself rather than perfection. And keep those statements around. Maybe write them on a sticky note or on your computer desktop so that you're reminded of these positive statements. Another tool is to become your own best friend, right? So what if a friend told you, I'm lazy because I was only able to exercise for 1 hour instead of 2 hours a day? Or what if a friend told you, I'm never going to get into UW, I got a 3.5 in my math class? Or what if some told you, I wasn't selected to be a peer mentor, I'm a total failure? So these may be statements that are coming from your own mouth, but imagine them coming from a friend. And how would you respond to them compassionately and positively, right? So if we think of the second statement, I'm never going to get into UW, I got a 3.5 in my math class, you might tell a friend, well, you're doing excellent in all your other classes. Or I know you're really involved in extracurricular activities and you're a leader of a club. You're a great candidate for UW. Or you might just say, a 3.5 is actually a great grade in your math class, and I'm sure you'll still have a great chance of getting into your dream school. So these are some of the statements you can say to yourself as acting as your own close friend, rather than belittling yourself or criticizing yourself. You really want to look at the bigger picture of your perfectionistic thinking. So if we go back to the statement, I wasn't selected to be a peer mentor, I'm a total failure, you may ask yourself, does it really matter? What is the worst that can happen from me not being selected to be a peer mentor? I'm not part of that group. I don't get the exposure to other new students. But does it go much farther than that? If the worst does happen, can you survive it? And will this still matter tomorrow or next week or next year? Maybe in a few months from now, you'll be a leader of a club or activity, or you'll be involved in some other way. So will it really matter in a few days, a few weeks that you weren't selected to be a peer mentor? So these types of bigger picture questions you can use on yourself when you're having that perfectionistic thinking kind of override everything. Another tool is to change your perfectionistic behaviors. So overcoming your phobia of making mistakes or being imperfect involves doing just that. Gradually and purposely making mistakes and coming across as imperfect. This technique involves gradually putting yourself into situations that you usually avoid out of fear that things won't work out perfectly. So how would you purposely make mistakes? How would you come across as imperfect or put yourself into these types of situations? Maybe you show up for an appointment 15 minutes late. Maybe leave a visible area in your house a little messy. Or tell people when you're tired, or other feelings that you may consider it a weakness to have. So, I'm just having a bad day today. I didn't sleep very well, or I'm really nervous about something. Or wear a piece of clothing that has a stain on it. Send an email or text that maybe includes a few grammatical mistakes. Or try a new restaurant without first looking if it's good or not. Right? So these may seem kind of silly, but they're ways for you to try to be okay with having imperfect behaviors. We're all imperfect in different ways. So just kind of stretching the boundaries of what you think is acceptable behavior and trying to gradually put yourself into situations where you come across as imperfect and human, right? It's human to do these things. Another tool, the final tool I'll share with you, is to focus on your values and strengths. So perfectionists often define their worth by their accomplishments, not by their strengths or their values. Defining ourselves by our accomplishments leaves us pushing to do more, to be more, and prove ourselves. And while this can motivate us, our value as a person isn't dependent on being the best at something or earning it. It's important to remember that you are worthy simply because of who you are as a person. So much like writing down positive statements, you should also write down and reflect on what you value and what you feel you're good at. So maybe you love manga, or maybe you love drawing because it makes you happy. Or you value having close connections to your family members because that brings you a lot of joy. Or maybe you're really good at responding to friends when they're in need by communicating with them over the phone or texting. Or maybe you go deep in involvement in traditional aspects of your culture or family, and that you enjoy having that sense of community around you. So these are all things that are strengths or values that make up who you are. And there's plenty of ways and resources on the internet to reflect on that and to come up with a sense of what you value and what you feel you're good at and what you're passionate about. And these things often are not connected to accomplishments, being perfect at everything that you do. So take some time to write down what you value and what you feel that you're good at. I think if there's one thing I can share with you today is that its affection is always greater than perfection. So we can always strive to do more and be more, but loving ourselves for who we are and not what we accomplish will help us get there. Thank you so much, and thank you for attending this presentation.